Just when you thought air travel couldn't get more invasive, the TSA has unleashed a wave of new security checks in 2025 that's going to change the way you fly forever. But are these measures really protecting us, or are they just stripping away the last shreds of our freedom? 2025 has brought in some pretty big changes to the traveling world as the Transportation Security Administration, along with the Department of Homeland Security, has been rolling out new programs designed to make travel smoother, faster, safer, and a lot less stressful. Two of the biggest changes are the launch of One-Stop Security, a pilot program that tackles the headache of international arrivals, and sweeping updates to TSA checkpoints that affect all U.S. travelers. Together, they promise a new era for air travel. So join me today as we break down what's changing, why it matters, and how your next trip through a U.S. airport could look totally different. International travel has always come with extra layers of security. When you land in the U.S. from abroad, even if you've already gone through airport screening in another country, TSA has traditionally required passengers to go through security again before catching their connecting flight. This means you still have to go through the extra lines after a long-haul flight, re-screening your carry-on bags, removing shoes, laptops, and liquids all over again. And let's not forget to worry about whether your checked luggage is even going to make it onto the next flight after being pulled for additional screening. For travelers, this was one of the most frustrating parts of international travel, and the TSA knew it. That's why in 2025, they introduced a new pilot program. So the idea behind One-Stop Security is simple. If you've already been screened at a trusted foreign airport that meets or exceeds U.S. security standards, why do it all over again? There's also another pilot program where passengers arriving from selected international airports can skip TSA's secondary screening in the U.S. altogether. Instead of slogging through the line, you'd go straight from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to your connecting gate. Also, your checked luggage is automatically transferred to your final destination without the extra TSA check. When the program first started, it only covered 2 daily flights from London Heathrow, one on American Airlines to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, or DFW, and another on Delta Airlines to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, or ATL. The US and UK worked closely to ensure that Heathrow screening procedures matched TSA standards, and that's why it was chosen as the first test case. Now, TSA plans to expand the program to other airports in the future, but only if they can demonstrate compliance with US security requirements. For international travelers, the benefits are obvious. There's no need to worry about racing through TSA lines after a long flight. Now you can move directly to your gate, making tight connections far less of a gamble. That aside, your checked bags follow you seamlessly without any extra handling involved. Now, before you go and breathe a sigh of relief, it's worth noting that some former TSA officers have voiced concerns that secondary screening has, in the past, caught prohibited items missed by foreign airports. While Heathrow's procedures are robust, not all international airports meet the same standards. That's why experts emphasize that the program's success depends on strict vetting and constant compliance. Some have questioned if it makes sense for security to be sacrificed for the necessity of speed. But for a lot of travelers, the arrival of One-Stop Security feels like the TSA is finally listening to feedback, which they feel is a promising first step toward making international travel into the US a little less of a grind. One-Stop Security isn't the only update. Domestically, TSA and DHS are also making moves that could change the way all international and US-based passengers alike go through airport checkpoints. First, if you've traveled in the last 2 decades, you probably know the drill. Shoes off, bins out, shuffled through the scanner, and your socks. That rule came about in 2006 after a failed attempt to hide explosives in shoes, and it's been a source of frustration for travelers ever since. But as of July 8, 2025, that requirement is gone as Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that passengers no longer need to remove shoes during security screening. Now, this might sound like a small change, but when you multiply it by the millions of people going through TSA checkpoints every year, that impact is pretty huge. It saves time, reduces bottlenecks, and makes the process feel a lot less intrusive. And as somebody who travels a couple times a year, It's really nice how fast it is to get through checkpoints now. Also, remember the little 3.4-ounce bottles of liquid all crammed into a quart-sized plastic bag? Well, that restriction introduced in 2006 has succeeded in becoming one of the most universally hated air travel rules in the world. Now, there's some good news. DHS is actively working on it. While no date has been set, officials say the restriction could soon be eased up or even eliminated altogether. Advanced scanners are making it possible to detect liquids more accurately, meaning travelers might finally be able to carry larger bottles of water, shampoo, or other items without worrying about TSA confiscation. For frequent flyers, this could be one of the most welcome changes in years. Thirdly, another major shift coming in is the use of facial recognition technology. Here's the drill. Your face and boarding pass are scanned, followed by automated gates or turnstiles opening once you've verified. In a lot of cases, you won't even need to interact with a TSA agent because the vision is for passengers to walk through checkpoints with minimal pauses, making the process smoother and faster. Of course, this does raise some questions about privacy and data use, which the DHS has promised that security and accountability measures will be put in place for. For travelers, though, the practical result will likely be shorter lines and fewer manual checks. Not only that, but if you've ever fumbled with pulling your laptop out of your bag, you'll be happy to know that good news is on its way, because some airports will test simplified bag screening systems. That is, no removing laptops, no pulling out liquids, just drop your bag on the belt and move on through. I recently flew out of Newark, and that was glorious. Now, this is all made possible by more advanced scanners, which can create clearer 3D images of what's inside your carry-on. But even with all of these updates, not everything is changing. Travelers will still need to go through identity verification and pass through security screening of some kind. Also, they still have to follow TSA guidelines for prohibited items. So, while the process is becoming smoother, don't expect to breeze through airports with zero checks. Security is still the top priority. Now, if you're like me when I flew recently, you might be asking yourself, why now? Why are these changes happening in 2025 after nearly 2 decades of rigid post-9/11 procedures, especially with the anniversary? Well, the answer lies in technology and layered security, because advanced scanners can now spot threats more accurately. We won't even talk about how additional security officers provide backup oversight, and Real ID requirements and improved identity verification have made it a lot harder for bad actors to slip through the system. Together, these layers allow TSA to ease up on some of the more burdensome rules without weakening safety measures. So, what does this mean for you? Well, for the average traveler, here's the bottom line. If you're flying into the US from certain international airports like Heathrow, you may soon skip that dreaded secondary TSA screening. Not only that, but if you're flying domestically, you'll no longer need to remove your shoes at security checkpoints, and in the near future, you may not even have to worry about liquid restrictions or pulling laptops out of bags. Even so though, expect more automation and facial recognition to speed up identity checks, because traveling isn't going to feel effortless overnight, but these updates are a clear shift toward making it a lot less stressful. For years, the TSA has been criticized as a bottleneck, the source of long lines, missed flights, and frustrating rules. The changes rolling out in 2025 show the agency is finally listening to travelers and embracing technology to make the process better. So which of these updates interests you the most? Make sure you let us know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you in the next video.